always trust everyone to be themselves, but trust in the fact that you can see them well. I mean, so it's like, trust. It takes too much energy to not trust someone. I mean, it takes too much energy. You always got to stay 2 steps ahead of them or whatever. Right. But trust them to be them.
Right. To be themselves.
Trust a snake to bite you. Right. Trust a lion to laugh. Trust a thief to steal from you. Like, trust them to be them. Too. But know them when you see them.
Get your copy of Fire. It's definitely a must-read. If you enjoy hood books, this one is it. Just like the title of the book, it's officially Fire. Get it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle.
Let's go.
Peace. This is the Enemy's Public. I am Bro.Nasir. Hope everyone's having a wonderful evening. This evening's topic is who created the ghetto? AKA, i.e., the projects. Ghetto was one thing, but a project is a social engineering experiment when they put hundreds to thousands of people in one area, and then they put drugs in the community, guns in the community, and a liquor store in the community, all types of mind-altering substance in the community. And then when the community goes down, when the property value goes down, the community goes down, there's violence in the community, all kind of negative impediments in the community, they blame the people when it is a social engineering experiment. Project. That's exactly what it is. A project, another word for experiment. But before I get into the subject matter, I'm going to play 2 songs before I get into it. Share my screen. 2 quick songs and we're getting right into it.
Kilogram, you got to give up this CG on a strength, G. Yo, you ain't doing up for the neighborhood. Just because you ride on it, that don't mean you're down, you know what I'm saying? Hey, yo, Chuck, get it to the birds, G. Get it to the birds, man.
None of the free, but the skin I'm in identifies me. So the people around me energize me. Call on aboard this train where I talk about raw, hardcore, leaving frauds on the outside. Put the bad things in me walking by the train. And the reason for that is because we look the same, looking all around at my so-called friends. Light skin to the brown, the black. Here we go again. Homie over there, no skeeving, but he be thieving. I don't trust him, gotta bust him up. Out goes his hand and I caught him. He was start for me. Yeah, I wanna cut it off. The black thing is around, I call a night train. If I could do it, the bear would call a monkey train to attack the black, and it's true. Cause some of them looking just like you. Watch your back.
Yo, look out for the night train.
Stop the train. Stop the train. Yeah. Stop the train. Watch out for the train that's on the track.
Yo, look out for the night train.
Stop the train. Look out. Staying on the scene, sitting on the train. See all the faces look about the same. They're gonna sell out who's taking a ride like cargo. Could be deals the keys from Key Largo. Running that narcotic, a Georgie got it. Take a making the G's erotic. In the fees and schemes so we can put them down. But his method is right, I put them in the ground. Got the nerve to tell me, yo, brother man, he ain't black man, Betty and he's black man. Know the murder is old. Trade order for ride the train, self-pay the trainer, self-pain. The master's toy. His little boy, hard to a boy, look with it, but he know it, boy, cause he ride the train. You think he down for the cause? Cause his face looking just like yours. Look out. Watch your back.
Yo, look out for the night train.
Watch out for the train that's on the track.
Come on. Hey.
Night train.
Yeah. Like that, like that. Come on.
Night train.
Hey. Here we go. Yo, look out for the night train.
More the same, it's saying who's saying I'm flowing like night train, running the pain of the black rain. You look, you laugh, you doubt and go out, and I'm gone. But the bass goes on. The talk, walk the walk. The king of New York, crack a lack, attack the black, the crack the back. What again? I test a friend with sincerity, or consider him an enemy. Who am I to tell a lie? Rather push the bush. Hope the cracker gets crushed. I'm rolling with rush. Lead the other bum rush. Rushing I ain't. Was sweating like paint. Looking at the pot I got and it's kicking. But it ain't chicken, but it's living for a city so sick and tired of a scene buck wild. Pile in a file, see now or child. It said it never been no worse than this. I'm on the night train, I hope you don't miss it. Give you what they got to give, you just go. You mustn't just put your trust in every brother, yo. So don't give a damn, cause they the other man. What's in a bomb? Pulsing in some time. Disgracing the race and blowing up the whole crew. With some of them looking just like you.
All aboard. Night train.
Now we're going to go to some KRS-One. After this, we're going to get into the subject matter.
Extra, extra, read all about it. KRS-One's rhymes have been doubted. Suckers stepped up and got murdered.
Yo, this goes out to George Bush. Get off my Margaret Thatcher. Benson Hurst. Get off my It's a clerk. Get off my It feels good to grab the mic and just allow yourself to chat. The master of the microphone is here and he's black. Reciting poetry, beautifully articulated, demonstrated by the never faded strong facial feature of the teacher. I'm the teacher, you can check it. The styles they're doing is from my old record. They bought my album for $8.99. Studied the style, then wrote their own rhyme. I don't mind because I'm here to show the lost MCs which way to go. So here's my rep to those that slept and didn't get the first concept in depth. I am the manifestation of study, not the manifestation of money. Therefore, I advance through thought, not what's manufactured and bought. Concentration and calculation goes into every song creation. The first and second album rock you. Third album made you think and got through. Didn't you think I knew? Number 3 wasn't for the dance crew, but it gave me a chance to see who was really down with BDP. I set the warm milk in the glass, and the snakes came out the grass. They don't realize I'm not confined, nor trapped by space and time. I am a rebel, an overthrower, descendant of the black man Noah. Radio DJs all around constantly tell me how they are down to uplift Africa and unite black. Yet they fronted when I drop. Why is that? It's a fact. I don't beg for juice. I just get loose and demonstrate the truth. Many MCs can only rock the many, but I rock a few with my brother Kenny. From 20,000 to 10, I'm housing. African culture is what I'm arousing in your consciousness, soul, and body. Pay attention while I rock the party, cause now I'm gonna show you how the East Coast rocks. Bumping sucker MCs out the box, rocking the dreadlocks and the flat tops. I like these ops, so I try not to stop but drop the new hip hop and get props. Scotland, 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 Scotland rock spins in heaven while the earth I rock. MCs adopt the styles I drop. They got no direction, they got no direction, they got no direction, so they wanna go pop. Chasing the charts up and down like suckers, totally ignoring their sisters and brothers. They're the ones to say you're number one, not chart position. So kick up the drum and hum, sing along, it's a poetry session. Mathematically applied, no guessing. I'm fresh and dope and wild and wicked. Get your ticket, come straight to the jam, I'll rip it. Original lyrics, original lyrics, original lyrics. Kenny Parker on the mix.
Yes, I'm Special K on the York 2 show on WBDP. This is the brand new one by KRS-One on Boogie Down Production, and it's off Entertainment LP. Want to send a shout out to the BDP Posse, of course, to Teddy Ted, Nice and Smooth, D Nice, D Square, and my man Fish, Cindy Mills, Miss Melody, Willie D, and of course me. See you.
Peace, brothers and sisters. Again, this stream is going to be about who created the ghetto, because a lot of us, we suffer because of our environment. And a lot of us don't know why we suffer, and our environment plays a big part on why we suffer in our behavior and what's around us. We don't even realize it. Yet, some of us, the ghetto, so-called ghetto, it's all we know. Some of us don't want to let go of the hood. We have people who make money, even rappers, they would talk about the hood and their allegiance to the hood, but when you look up, you see their children in private schools. They don't live in the hood, but they always talk about the hood, trying to convince us that we should be there, which is a bunch of nonsense. Now, whatever our community is, instead of moving to a community where the people don't want you there, we can make our communities as beautiful as those other communities. Another subject for another day, but I'm going to get into the subject matter. Who created the ghetto? It wasn't us. Again, project is another word for experiment. Social engineering experiment, there is.
Legacy of redlining, the legal government-sponsored effort to deny mortgages and home ownership opportunities to African Americans and other minorities continues to undermine their quality of life. This violation of basic civil rights continues to negatively impact educational attainment, health outcomes, wealth accumulation, self-esteem, mortality rates, and civic engagement. Homeownership has proved to be both the doorway and gatekeeper to success and well-being in America. It is at the core of today's racial wealth gap.
There's a very powerful myth in this country, and that is that residential segregation in this country is something we call de facto segregation, something that happened by accident. Every textbook that's used in American high schools and middle schools today lies about this history. It talks about how northern cities were de facto segregated without government involvement. They talk about how the Federal Housing Administration did a wonderful job of creating single-family homes in the suburbs for working-class families, without mentioning that the working-class families that created these homes for could only be white.
This began a history of excluding people of color from government housing programs, intended to lower the cost of mortgages and increase homeownership. Segregated neighborhoods by race using a code system. Outlined minority neighborhoods using the color red. Intended to expand the secondary mortgage market by securitizing mortgage loans. Community boards often deny.
When he said using the color red, that is the beginning of what they call in the cities, they call it redlining. He just said that, but he didn't say that that's what the term originated from. The term originated from what they started doing, and they created the term by doing the action, redlining.
Denied minority veterans mortgages. Many minority vets could not be buried in the same cemetery as whites. It wasn't until 1970 that lending to communities of color began to increase.
The way this manifested itself was through the drawing of maps. Different neighborhoods were underwritten as being riskier or safer, and the principal component that determined riskiness or safety from a lending standpoint was ethnic and racial composition.
It was at that point that the real estate developers began to drop strings around areas. The local banker could choose who would get mortgages where, so that we could not have gotten a loan out in the suburbs because those were whites only. The concept of a middle-class black only exists in the mind of a middle-class black. Everywhere else in the suburbs, you are that nigger family on the corner of Warren Road and Boulevard Way.
Well, the truth is that we've had in this country generations of affirmative action for whites. And the sad truth of it is that whites don't know that that's happened, or they refuse to accept it, or don't understand the history. And what that leads to is this false kind of narrative that
this is the system benefiting white people and controlling the narrative, and having the white people actually thinking that they're entitled, and actually having them thinking that they earned when they haven't. They always talk about affirmative action when it comes to our people, but the largest recipients of affirmative action goes to them and has gone to them.
I did it myself. This Horatio Alger individual responsibility narrative.
There were many federal, state, and local policies explicitly racial, designed to create segregation in every metropolitan area in the country, and policies that were so powerful that they still determine the racial boundaries of metropolitan areas today. The Federal Housing Administration began a program to suburbanize the entire white working class population into single-family homes.
This is Levittown, Pennsylvania, a new suburban community of 60,000 people with its giant shopping center, winding lanes named for flowers and trees.
Now, they did not want us around Levittown, and I'm sure Big Dog Philly OG is familiar with Levittown because he grew up in Pennsylvania. I'm sure he's familiar with how segregated it is and how racist they are in Levittown.
Trees. It is fairly typical of communities all over America where families are pursuing the American dream to give their children a better chance in life. Nearly all are young people. A large proportion are veterans. For many, it is the first house of their own, and it represents a major financial investment. In August 1957, Levittown, Pennsylvania attracted international attention as William Myers, Jr. and his family moved into the three-bedroom house. They're very close to the Levittown norm, except in one respect. William Myers, Jr. and his family are Negroes in an all-white community.
If more colored are allowed to move in, Levittown is going to go downhill.
The only way that those developers could get the capital to do that was by going to the Federal Housing Administration. In order to get that approval, they had to commit never to sell a home to an African American.
Access to leverage allowed middle-class whites to build wealth.
The white families who bought those homes were able to use their wealth to send children to college, and they used it to bequeath wealth to their children, who could use it as down payments for their own homes.
Restricted covenants ensured that minorities could not buy into white neighborhoods. Property.
These are people who call themselves so great, but they got to do all this to maintain what they have. Or this redlining, discrimination, and just cheating their way through life altogether. It's a man running for president, cheated his way through life, and he got the highest office in the land by cheating.
Properties shall continue to be occupied by the same social and racial classes.
When Karen and I purchased this home that was built in 1948, we found some documents in a closet. Neither the whole or any part of said tract shall be sold, rented, or leased to any persons or persons not of white or...
She said tract. Listen to the wordplay that she said. The said tract. It wasn't even called a contract back then. It was called a tract. It's called a contract now because it's a damn contract. Keyword con.
Or Caucasian race.
Created greatest growth of the middle class in the history of the world. In 1940, 42% of white families owned their own home. In 2000, 71% of white families owned their own home.
So consequently, that those 71%, 72% of white homeowners who own their own home should be thankful to the federal government for providing them this opportunity. What did not happen, or what happened at the same time, was that we, people of color, were discriminated against and were prevented from taking advantage of those opportunities.
The recent housing and foreclosure crisis were a continuation of a form of redlining. Financial institutions practiced unrealistic credit scoring and predatory lending. Subprime mortgages grew nearly 250%. In 1998, subprime mortgages made up 9.8% of the mortgage market. By 2006, they made up 23.5% of the market.
And the gap between white homeownership rates and black homeownership rates is 30 percentage points larger than it was back in 1968. In 1968, the typical black family had 1/6 as much wealth as the typical white family. Now it is 1/10. We have gone backwards since the civil rights era.
Latinos lost close to $170 billion worth of equity that they had accumulated in the home that they purchased many, many years before then.
When they come to access products, the choices that they're given are limited. So you're given, instead of conventional loan, you're given a special loans that have higher interest rates or higher fees that again set you up for foreclosure or failure as well.
The biggest scandal of your tenure is your unwillingness to do your job and enforce the laws that reduce housing discrimination.
The housing crisis.
You see, they took a man who was a neurosurgeon probably the smartest man in Donald Trump's whole administration, and put him in charge of housing urban development. They take a surgeon, a neurosurgeon, and put him in charge of the damn projects. And he wasn't even smart enough to know that he was being disrespected. His mind was being disrespected. His credentials were being disrespected. I swear, some of our people would do anything for a position and to have nearness to our open and consistent enemy.
Crisis affected all communities, but disproportionately devastated minority families. Black and Hispanic families lost nearly 20 years of wealth between 2007 and 2013. Minority home ownership is the lowest it's been since 1996.
Redlining discrimination in the Asian American community is live and kicking. And in California, you'll see that Asians had the second highest probability of going to foreclosure, very comparable to Latinos. So Latinos were 1.4, for Asians it was 1.3. And so whether it is in homeownership, rental, small business, foreclosure, across the board, there is redlining.
Between 1934 and 1962, 120 billion in FHA and VA loans were issued. Over that period of time, 98% of the loans went to white families, and less than 2% went to African Americans and other minorities. Using the average home price index between 1934 to 2018, those FHA VA loans equates to at least $3 trillion in current real estate value. Assuming that as loans were paid off and excess funds were invested in stocks and other investments, conservatively, another $2 trillion were created. This white subsidy is the major contributor to the current racial wealth gap.
So many white Americans experience this sense of self-esteem, a sense of superiority, if you will, this sense of mastery, that they have created their own destiny in their lives, and they have no acknowledgement of this invisible hand that supported them throughout their lives, and not just them, but there's a legacy of that invisible hand across generations.
They don't even care. They have generational wealth that that wasn't earned and passed down. It was systemically passed down, and they don't even get it. And they actually see one thing that we need to understand is that white people know what they did to establish the United States. They know what they did to establish the United States. They're proud of it. They brag about it. And we are thinking that they're going to do what's right. And they also know what was done to our people as far as the discrimination, the redlining, what have you. They know this. And if we think that we're going to ask them to do what's right and they're going to do it, we're dreaming. They're not going to do what's right because they feel it's giving up something that's theirs. They know they didn't earn it. They know they didn't build it, but they saying it's ours. And if we want it, we're going to have to take it. We actually have to take what's ours. We know it's ours, but saying it's yours and you got people on platforms talking about, oh, we're the landlord, we this one. No, you're not. If you feel better by saying that, knowing that you're not, and it's a feel-good moment for you, be down. But wherever we're going to get that's ours, it's going to have to be taken. We have to know who we're dealing with when we approach people. Know who we're dealing with, because we're dealing with people who did everything that you can go to jail for to establish this.
It has translated itself from the original affirmative action to trillions of dollars of a head start ahead of other communities like African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans, others who don't have the same benefit.
Children of homeowners are more likely to graduate from high school, have less childhood behavioral problems, and achieve higher college graduation rates.
In segregated housing and in neighborhoods that are thereby segregated, that tend to be low-income neighborhoods, there is the greater likelihood that the youngsters will be involved in gangs or will be recruited to be in gangs.
I noticed an absence of hope, an absence of light.
Don't forget about the agents that come in when they see young people organizing. The young people can be organizing for something noble, something good for the community. And an agent will come in who look like them and organize them on behalf of the federal government and corrupt the whole organization. It happened with every organization that we had established. You name it, an agent was sent in to help establish those organizations, even risen to official capacity, worked their way up through the ranks, organizing this organization to infiltrate it and corrupt it.
These kids were barraged with a message every single day of their lives that they weren't valued, that they didn't matter. And they internalized that. And that caused frustration and anger and eventually despair and a loss of hope.
There's now very good science that shows that the sense of not belonging, the sense of lacking self-esteem, raises cortisol levels in your blood. And cortisol is good for you when you're in an extremely stressful situation. But when you're constantly bathed in cortisol, because you're constantly feeling these stressors of being marginalized and being told that you're less worthy, less valuable, and being in constant state of really fear and anxiety, it changes your physiology completely. It makes you more prone to cardiovascular disease. It makes you more prone to diabetes. It makes changes in your brain, which actually makes it more difficult to engage in what we call executive function.
This kind of chronic stress, which is driven by the policies that we've created, is as lethal as any knife or any gun.
This is actually Philly that they're showing. The pictures, the clips, is actually Philly.
Suppose discrimination did end today. How many generations would it take to get to rough equality in wealth across races? Her answer is 7 generations, more than 200 years.
And so when white Americans hear about affirmative action for Blacks or for Latinos, they're outraged. They think, I've done this by myself. Why can't these people? There's something wrong with these people.
The same
They tell us to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps when they haven't. Everything that they received or have was given to them or made easy to get. And they are also made to think that they worked hard for it when they haven't worked hard for it. It was given, it was made easy. You look at, almost take Donald Trump, for instance. You can tell by the way he behaves that he was a spoiled brat as a child. You can tell he wasn't taught no manners. If he was taught manners, he didn't listen to nobody. You can tell that he was a spoiled brat, got where he wanted, and probably threw a tantrum, because he threw tantrums on the rostrum now when he's up there speaking. So you could tell that he didn't earn a damn thing that he have.
Programs that were provided to white Americans that enabled them to accumulate this wealth through home ownership. Those same opportunities have to be provided to us.
Imagine where minority families would be today if their grandparents had the same access to wealth through homeownership that white families had. What would the wealth gap be between white and minority families if minorities had the same access to wealth through homeownership? Would there be a
big fact, Marco Power, affirmative action, started with them, and they received it more, and they still are to this day receiving affirmative action. It's not called affirmative action, but you can take the word action, and they're given something, without earning it. And if you ask, is that true? And I would say affirmative.
gap?
This video I want to show next, it's something that you're more than likely going to enjoy it. I stumbled across this and I added this to the stream because this is where we're at. So I added it to the stream.
Several made it to freedom, at least for a while.
Let me run this back because I was watching it earlier, but I stumbled across this when I was
in the 1700s. What if I told you?
What if I told you that there was a group of...
I ran across this video as I was doing my research and looking for material, and I said, let me add this to the stream.
Black Indians that led the largest slave revolt in U.S. history.
What if I told you that there were a group of black?
Won't you get it?
What if I told you?
What if I told you?
What if I told you
that there were a group of black Indians
that created the largest haven
in
the U.S. for escaped slaves?
In the 1700s. What if I told you?
What if I told you that there was a group of black Indians that led the largest slave revolt in U.S. history?
What if I told you that there were a group of blacks in the United States
that forced their own emancipation
before the Civil War?
What if I told you?
What if I told you that there were a group of black Indians
that led a mass exodus along the Trail of Tears and then right out of the United States?
What if I told you?
What if I told you?
What if I told you that this is the true story of the Black Seminoles, and you've likely never heard it before?
I never learned about them, and they were never in my history books.
This is a story about betrayal, distrust, backstabbing, and about a people that have been, for some reason, lost to history. This is about the Black Seminoles, the Black Indians,
and their long, remarkable journey to freedom.
Can't do this no more, Abigail. I won't.
What do you mean, Abraham? You're scaring me.
We've been slaves long enough now. I won't spend another day under the whip of these crackers.
Escape? Where can we go? You know they'll kill us. They'll kill
Florida.
us dead.
Florida. I heard them say it's free there. It's a chance, Abigail.
Florida? It's so far, Abraham, and it's dangerous.
I'll kill anybody that gets in our way. Staying here is death. We deserve better. You deserve better. We deserve a life free of these crackers.
Live free or die trying.
Live free, die trying.
Them, along with several other enslaved Africans, made their way down to Spanish Florida. They fought slavers, bounty hunters, and many were recaptured and lost their lives along the way. But finally, several made it to freedom, at least for a while, in the swamplands of Spanish Florida.
During the same time period, there were several civilized indigenous populations scattered across these lands.
The term civilized tribes was applied to the major Native American tribes that took the bad medicine of the white man. They were classified as civilized because they had adopted the attributes of European culture, becoming Christians, sending their children off to re-education institutions, market participation, intermarriage with white Americans, and
wait for it,
chattel slavery practices, including the purchase of enslaved Africans. Little did they know that the cotton reservations that they had would become cotton plantations after they were stolen and seized by the same white people they were emulating. Hey guys, sorry for the shaky video in advance, but we are on our way to a town called Mosquis, and this is another town here in Mexico. But this town is the closest town we could get to Nacimientos, which is the town that a tribe, actually the Seminoles from the USA, kind of came over here to seek refuge during times of slavery. They are warrior people. They are a fierce people. There are some survivors, and it's not a whole lot of them there. So we're hoping that we're able to make some contact.
we've been exploring stories of how like Africans made it here, and it's a variety of ways, but this community that we're going to is a completely different story and history of how they made it here.
So we're just praying for some favor as we go so we can show you guys and so we can learn about the real deal here in Mexico and Black people and their migration here. So see y'all there.
Yes, my name is Wendy Goodlow. I am a Black Seminole, and more specifically, I'm a descendant of the Seminole Negro Indian Scouts, which were the group of men that joined the military and fought for the military in the U.S. from 1870 to 1914. So I grew up in Brackettville around that history.
We had not found out about the Black Underground Railroad that led into Mexico. We had never heard about that one.
Yeah, not many people have.
But whoa, like, what you know about this Underground Railroad? What's going on? Black indigenous people moving to Mexico. What is this?
I know, it's a lot. That's what I always tell you. It's a lot of story. The way that our elders began the story was that in the late 1600s, around 1680s into the early 1690s, there were what would become known as the Gullas, but they were enslaved Africans living in the Low Country who took it upon themselves to seek their own freedom. So instead of going north, they went south into Florida because Florida at that time was a Spanish territory. So it was not part of the formation of the U.S. at that point. It was owned by the Spanish.
In 1687, 8 men, 2 women, and a nursing child escaped from Carolina to Spanish St. Augustine and requested baptism into the true faith. Florida's governor sheltered the runaways out of Christian obligation and refused to return them when an agent from Carolina came to reclaim them. The Slaves' Telegraph quickly reported this outcome, and soon other runaways began arriving in St. Augustine.
Now I'm going to go past this and get back to who created the ghetto. I just wanted to show that real quick. I can revisit it at another time, but I want to go back to who created the ghetto.
What's up, YouTube? Coming back at you, man. I really need some more feedback, man, because I'm really like beating my head, against the wall on this one right here. This is a real touchy subject right here. And like I say, man, this has really been bothering me, and I really just have to get this off my chest. You know what I mean? So I just have to vent, and let it out. And this subject right here is who created the ghetto? Because I got a lot of friends and a lot of, homeboys and a lot of people I know that claim the fame, that they created these ghettos, not knowing they really don't get no credit, for saying that they created the ghetto. I know brothers that be like out there like, man, we made this street what it is. Not even really taking time to even do the research on the street name, because they don't even know what the street name is. For all they know, they can be claiming a street name that belonged to an ex slave master or something. Cause we didn't name these streets. We did not name the streets of America. They named the streets of America. So you can be out there repping some street, you know what I'm saying? You can be like, well, this is Johnson Street. Not knowing if you went and did your research on why they named that street Johnson, you might be surprised on who Johnson is, or Edison, or any of those streets like that. You know what I'm saying? Emerson Street, you know what I'm saying? Mission Street. You don't even know who these people is. You can probably go back and do the research on these people, and these people used to have slaves, but you repping their street. See, that's what I don't understand. And like I say, that's what I tell my friends, you know, because I used to gang bang back in the days, you know what I'm saying? I got Bloods and Crips in my family. I live out here in California. I used to be a Crip, you know what I'm saying? But thankfully I ran into a real intelligent black man by the name of Jeremiah that really enlightened me and opened up my eyes and put me in a, you know, in a different place. You know what I'm saying? And put me in a position where it was time for me to grow up and use my brain and use the intelligence that I have. You know what I'm saying? I'm really thankful to that brother. And yeah, like I say, really, you know what I'm saying? Some brothers really think they started these streets they started up. You ain't started no streets up. You don't even know. I don't even think half of these brothers in the street even know who created the ghetto. We didn't create the ghetto. We know who created the ghetto. And we got to understand that we was never supposed to fall in love with the ghetto. See, that's you know, now we want to embrace the ghetto. We want to brag about the fact that we from the block. Man, I was born in the trap. You know, now we want to brag on the dirty environment, you know what I'm saying, that we was put into. Now we want to rep. See that word we always use, rep your block.
And also, you know, people talk about, they was yelling this back in the late 1990s and into the 2000s, the dirty, dirty. You know, the brother's on point with what he's saying. The dirty South, the dirty, dirty. Nah. Being dirty in any aspect is nothing to say loud and brag about.
Rep your hood. Now we want to rep this garbage they gave us. They gave us garbage. They give us ran down houses, ran down blocks, run down homes. Everything on there ran down. But now we want to rep that. Now we proud to be in a messed up environment. We proud to be in the dirt they threw us in. I just can't seem to understand that. That was never supposed to happen. That was never the intentions, even of them. When they put us in the ghetto and they created the ghettos and created the economic crisis that we had in order to even be in this position that we is in today, I don't even think they ever thought that we would ever embrace this dirty ass hellhole they put us in. I just don't understand it. Yeah, I used to rep my hood until I found out it wasn't mine. Every street in every block they own. So how am I gonna rep a street that doesn't belong to me? None of those streets out.
The crazy part is, you have brothers repping the street. They rep the street real hard against each other. Against each other. You let that decal car drive through and see how they rep the street. Even if the car is unmarked, 3 white guys can jump out their car and pat their pockets. Don't even identify themselves as cops. You see them jumping out of a Crown Vic or some type of Impala or something, and automatically they can come and pat your pockets, but you repping your block. You're repping your hood. It's not yours. If you buy it up, it's yours. If you buy it up, you can say, well, we don't want y'all driving through here. And they can't drive through there because it's your property. Once you make whatever property around your areas, make it private, you determine if somebody can drive through there.
Out there belong to you. They can come through there and they can bulldoze those streets down anytime they want to. They own it. You don't own nothing. They can come there and change that street to Fag Street if they want to. They can turn around and change that street to You Ain't a Damn Thing Street. So if they change that street to You Ain't a Damn Thing Street and name it, use a dumbass, is you going to rep dumbass block? Is you gonna say I'm from the retarded hood? If they named it retarded, if they named it Fag Street, would you be out there throwing up your C's talking about I'm from that Fag Street block? Because they are most definitely in control of what is being named. They can change the name anytime they want to. See, so you repping streets that don't even belong to you. You rep.
I'm going to move on to why did they build high-rise public housing projects?
In the spring of 2007, the Chicago Housing Authority demolished the last of the 28 buildings in the Robert Taylor Homes housing project. Robert Taylor Homes is one of several high-profile housing project demolitions, from St. Louis's Pruitt-Igoe to the fellow Chicago project Cabrini Green. The demolitions serve as an admission that high-rise public housing wasn't a good idea. The housing that replaced them are all low-rise projects better integrated within existing neighborhoods. So why did anyone back then think this was a good idea? Why did housing authorities build these high-rise projects in the first place? To understand why these high-rise projects were built, we're going to have to go back in time, all the way back to the
social engineering experiment. You got, okay, say if you take the largest housing project in the United States, which is Queensbridge, that many people, you put all the negative stuff there. That's what your experiment is. The guns, the violence, the drugs, prostitution, the whatever is negative, whatever is unbecoming of a community is all there. And it's put there. So that's what the social engineering experiment is. And that was the creation of our ghetto.
To the Great Depression. This is when the US government really began to get seriously involved with the construction of public housing. Prior to the Great Depression, the private market was against the idea of government competing against them, but the unprecedented economic climate subdued their protests. Now, contrary to what you might think, public housing in this era was not designed to house the poorest of the poor, but instead help the middle class that was now struggling thanks to the Depression. Activist and housing advocate Catherine Bauer shaped the nation's vision for public housing in this era and literally wrote the 1937 law that really kicked off public housing in the United States. She envisioned large-scale projects on the edges of communities. She favored modern architectural techniques, but did not favor high-rise projects. This general approach of housing workers in low-rise buildings lasted until the end of World War II. Housing, not just public housing, changed dramatically in the post-war years. Middle-class white families moved to the suburbs in droves, buying single-family homes. They left behind Black and immigrant families who could not leave the city, either because they could not afford homes or because white neighborhoods would not tolerate Black families moving in. Banks wouldn't loan to minority families, and real estate agents wouldn't show them homes in white communities. White families were allowed to have a home, an asset that increased in value and cemented their place in the middle class. Black families in the city became poorer and poorer, and the federal government was about to make their lives even worse. Harry Truman signed the Housing Act of 1949, which was intended to provide vast amounts of federal funding to cities to eradicate what he called slums, where 5 million American families were living at the time, and build new modern housing. While upgrading the living conditions for millions of Americans may sound like a good idea, in practice it was a disaster. Planners refer to this period of time as urban renewal, but for many poor Black urban residents, it was known at the time as Negro removal, as Black neighborhoods were demolished, but only some housing was rebuilt, and much of that housing was actually intended for upper-income white residents. The full effects of urban renewal are far-reaching and will certainly be the subject of its own video someday, but here's what's relevant to our discussion of housing projects.
Now, when you see high-rises today, they're not considered projects. They're very expensive, and they're well kept. Well kept. But when they built the high rises for us to live in, they allowed them to be run down. They allowed anything to come in, and they wasn't protected like they are today. Like, I see buildings coming up in my city, high rises. Everything they're building in my city is 300 feet and up. Nothing under 300 feet they're building in my city now. I don't care if it's housing. Halfway up, they got like a resort, a pool up on the 6th floor, and all this other crazy stuff. And you don't even have to leave the building to walk your dog. Go down to the 6th floor and walk your dog. They got a dog walk inside the building on the roof and all kind of stuff.
Urban renewal directed funding at the inner cities, meaning the kind of projects Catherine Bauer advocated for, nice developments in the suburbs, just weren't possible. Inner city neighborhoods would be destroyed and replaced with completely new housing. Now, nothing about that plan suggests that public housing authorities...
That's called gentrification. When they say they're going to revitalize the area of that city, they tell you that, okay, you can move out, or they even help you move out to another location. And they'll tear their housing down, and they'll build nice apartments or housing, but they won't allow you to come back. That's gentrification, gentrifying the community.
Had to build high-rise buildings. They could have replaced existing low-rise neighborhoods with low or medium-rise buildings. But the architectural style known as modernism was popular. Modern architects had already developed solutions for the slums, and that solution was rows of bleak high-rise buildings. Le Corbusier was the most famous of the modern architects who aimed to create a modern city. His plan for Paris called for the demolition of the historic central city. In its place would be 18 identical skyscrapers within superblocks of lawn and trees. These towers in the park, as the urban form came to be known, were meant to serve as a cure for the ails of the city. Instead of enduring a dark, dirty place with a confusing street network, Parisians could enjoy plentiful light, air, and views in their tower, then take the elevator down to the park, located right at their front door. As the towers were identical and each floor was more or less identical, they would be very efficient to build and be able to house many people. That sounds pretty good, right? Well, when Corbu presented the idea back in 1925, Parisians hated it. Like, really hated it. It never came close to being built. But 25 years later, his ideas didn't sound so crazy anymore. Two reasons for this. First, housing advocates wanted to replace old and dilapidated housing with something better, and modern towers were pretty much the opposite of slum conditions at the time. Remember, in the area of Chicago where Robert Taylor Homes was built, many did not have private baths, and a third of housing units were overcrowded. Some of these residents look forward to the new modern homes with private baths, new appliances, and views. In fact, high-rise towers may have been a good place to live if local governments and housing authorities would have maintained and policed them well enough. And second, modern towers could be built relatively cheaply. Now, in the case of the Robert Taylor homes, Chicago Housing Authority officials strongly preferred low-rise designs like townhouses for their new housing. Elizabeth Wood.
Those don't look like townhouses. Don't call those townhouses because they're not townhouses. Those look like low-rise projects.
The progressive director of the CHA at the time had tried high-rise elevator buildings in the past. She was influenced by the modern tower in a park model of Le Corbusier. But after criticism from friend Catherine Bauer, Wood admitted that she wasn't comfortable putting people in high-rises. They instead experimented with 4-story buildings that were essentially two-story townhouses stacked on top of each other. Unfortunately, federal officials thought those plans were too costly and required Chicago to cut costs and build high-rise buildings. The marginal cost of adding floors to elevator buildings is relatively low, so up those buildings went. It's worth noting that the federal government does not deserve all the blame. One of the reasons Chicago's plans were so expensive is because the Chicago City Council, responding to the desires of their white constituents, refused to allow any new public housing on the outskirts of Chicago, where white families were moving in droves and land was cheaper. The Progressive Chicago Housing Authority had long advocated for sites in white neighborhoods, but the racism of white residents halted those plans and forced the mostly black residents of Robert Taylor homes into cheaper and worse high-rise buildings. And that brings us back to the wrecking ball. The instincts of the Chicago Housing Authority were right. The towers didn't work. When St. Louis tore down the Pruitt-Igoe project in 1972, an architectural historian called its destruction the day modern architecture died. The federal government entirely rethought its approach to public housing at that point, too. New public housing projects were low-rise, mixed income, and integrated into communities. The federal government also created a voucher program, so families in need can rent homes on the private market. I think it's safe to say the era of the high-rise public housing project is over. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Just a personal side note, Catherine Bauer and her husband William Worcester co-founded the College of Environmental Design here at UC Berkeley. It's one of the first schools to put architecture, landscape architecture, and city planning under one roof. It's actually this roof right back here. So thank you, Catherine Bauer, for your humane vision for social housing and for my current educational institution.
Now we're going to go to Chicago's public housing disaster, the Robert Taylor's homes. That's what they're calling it anyway.
If a skyline represents the city itself, what does it say about a place when an unsightly abomination, such as Chicago's lost Robert Taylor homes, arises? Well, the answer is surprisingly complex, leading modern city authorities to demolish an entire neighborhood. Even so, its memory runs deep. So join us as we discover the history of the Robert Taylor homes. I'm your host, Ryan Socash, and you're watching It's History. The Robert Taylor homes were a state-sponsored housing project with little industrial...
Peace, KG. How you doing, brother?
Yo, hey, we hour in. You doing a great build. Hey, I'm gonna dub stream this to my channel. I just got 100 subscribers, and you know, like we get episodes on our channel, so like I want this episode to be a part of my channel since I'm up here. But mostly I'm gonna be on mute, and then like when it, you know, it's time. But like, nah, this is a great topic, and you got the illustrations, the videos, and all that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm about to dub stream.
All right, go ahead, brother.
But a dark legacy, all the same. But to better understand, let's head back to the south side of Chicago in the mid-20th century. By this time, nearly 3/4 of Black Chicagoans lived in a single series of neighborhoods in the south side called the Black Belt. These houses were generally in rough shape. Many were decrepit, falling apart, and virtually uninhabitable. In fact, as a measurement of how bad the problem was, infant mortality in the Black Belt was 16% higher than anywhere else in Chicago from 1940 to 1960. Civil infrastructure and basic living standards were not being met, so eventually the city could no longer ignore this problem, as higher community members carried the fight. Robert Rochin Taylor was born in April of 1899, and through willpower, grit, and intellect, became the first Black member of the Chicago Housing Authority. His status and title would eventually rise to that of chairman, where he advocated for years for his fellow neighbors and friends who were abused and cast aside on Chicago's South Side. He's also notable for having created the Illinois Federal Savings and Loan Bank to support the community by mortgaging new homes and services as more established banks wouldn't accept their proposals, and the Housing Authority offered exorbitant rates. Presiding as the Chicago Housing Authority at the time, when over 90% of the new Chicago Housing Authority projects focused on Black occupants. In his eyes, however, quite realistically, Taylor believed that not enough was being done. He also believed that new housing projects for Black residents should be scattered across the entire city at a nearly equal rate, a concept that was outright refused by the powers at large. Segregation and redlining continued for years, even during his time at the Chicago Housing Authority. They did not disperse the Black Belt, rather they seemed to enforce it. Taylor, now growing old with his health degrading, resigned from the Chicago Housing Authority in 1950. He continued to work until his final resignation from the board 4 years later. In that time, Chicago was expanding in some unusual ways, hence he argued that clearing neighborhoods to construct belt roads, highways, and even school grounds had been counterproductive and displaced even more Black Chicagoans than any housing project possibly could assist. In fact, these issues are what most believe led to his final resignation. He'd pass away just 3 years later and would have been horrified if he'd known what the Chicago Housing Authority would do in his legacy. As you'll see in the coming chapter, this story really underlines how unpredictable life can be, perhaps a harsh reminder to prepare for the worst challenges with a good life insurance policy. Our sponsor, Policy Genius, gives you a smarter way to find and buy the right coverage for you and your family. As a proud father and husband, I have had a policy for years, and Policy Genius helped me confirm that it was the best choice. Policy Genius was built to modernize the life insurance industry. Their technology makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $25 per month for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer coverage in as little as a week and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Their licensed agents work for you, not the insurance companies. That means they don't have an incentive to recommend one insurer over another, so you can trust their guidance. There are no added fees, and your personal details are private. So it's no wonder that they have thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Your loved ones deserve a financial safety net. You deserve a smarter way to find and buy it. So head to policygenius.com/itshistory or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. In 1960, construction began on a massive public housing campaign in the South Side. The city's housing authority planned to build 4,415 homes and apartment blocks in the rapidly constricting neighborhood. At the time, housing campaigns like this were commonly called the projects.
That's a lot of people to put in one area, one condensed area, on top of each other, under each other. That's a lot of people.
Across the United States, they were rather common in populated areas. Actually, cities have them in rather high quantity.
Go ahead, brother.
All right, now check this out, right? You right. Look at that. Oh shit, you paused it. Look at that. What would you just say? Putting that many people in some shit like that? That's the car.
That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people.
Right, and look
almost
at
almost 6,000 people. It's a nice looking building for now, but you know, we don't know how it's going to turn out. You know,
and see, and when you give basic necessities to people and don't give it to them when they've been working hard and they can pay the money, that's the difference. It's a whole difference in this game.
if you look at the windows and the structure, it looks like tiers. You know what I'm saying? It looks like tiers. It looks like, you know, like pods, and it's like the brother Hawkeye said. You know, it's you know, look like a tall ass prison. This is what it looks like. It looks like a prison. It looks like tiers.
No bullshit.
Quantities, but these Chicago projects would take on a whole new size and capacity. Starting with the projected 3 years of construction, the campaign would tear down an estimated 95 acres of the Black Belt slum housing. In their view, it was a matter of containing a problem already long out of hand. Hence, the Chicago Housing Authority said it was taking a new approach. Chief of the board, Alvin E. Rose, said, quote, "A new design and fresh approach in site planning will make this development one of the city's most attractive and livable communities." It was a sprawling complex of 28 buildings, most 6 stories tall. The program also included a community recreation building, a management and maintenance center, and heating and power for the neighborhood. The first apartments were opened for use in 1962 and were sizable. So many out-of-luck Chicagoans could now afford rent. So how did this project develop as it was opened? Was everything Rose proclaimed true, and did it improve the community? The short answer is no.
All right, check it out, right? We got to get the community upkeep. Meaning, like, as our community, we got to learn how to own our own homes, how to fix the homes and the problems going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years with our homes that we paying tax of, even though we own our own home. And stop complaining about it. Look, figure this system out. Like, trust me, we can do this. It's not it's not that hard to do. Even me, that's my driving force. Like, hold on, and if you already there, or you need to teach other people that. No, all y'all are very capable of owning your own home. You can your own land and help people, but help people learn how to do that. What you're doing independently, and then all y'all help each other to help other people. That's how we're gonna. This ain't a dying or multiplying thing, but we can use our multiplier when it's more than each one teach one. It's everybody in our life, but our community first, because we got to care about our community, because a lot of people who don't like us or not care about our community. There's a lot of people outside our community who's definitely a part of our community and care about our community. So, and then it's funny, some of the people who are so outside of the community are so a part of the same community that is going through the same thing. Bro.Nasir. No bull, like, not percent no cap, no bull. Like, our community, we got to uplift each other and support each other. You feel me? Because ain't nobody else gonna do it for us. And then, who created the ghetto? This is like the science projects. No bull. Like, we get placed in certain shit. We
Survived
might
off
get an
social services. Poverty in these apartment blocks was some of the worst in Chicago, if not the entire country. Yet some estimates have it that thousands of dollars in drug deals occurred in the buildings, but the sourcing I saw for this was sketchy at best. But what we do know for certain is that the crime there was completely unchecked, as there wasn't a police station close to the projects until over a decade after construction. But what about Elvin Rose's claim that the community would be one of Chicago's most attractive when finished? Well, I'll let you be the judge here. Look at these buildings. Flat, featureless, and dull. They give some of the housing blocks in the USSR a run for their money. Perhaps the only positive aspect of this project was the reported communal feeling of cooperation between many residents. The YMCA and rec center were open for classes and leisure to the whole neighborhood, and several community members helped clean and manage small gardens and farm plots for vegetables and food. I should also point out that many firsthand accounts I've read on this topic regard the projects as a community and family that appreciated and worked together. Even so, the entire housing project was destined to crumble. What isn't in doubt is the lack of maintenance and social services in the projects. Budgets eventually shrank for keeping the building in order, and things began to decay rapidly. Elevators habitually broke or were sabotaged. Many became the scenes of assaults and muggings. When the elevators weren't traps for assaults, they could be dangerous on their own, not having safety sensors and doors strong enough to break bones if caught inside when closing. Oh, and the emergency button didn't work either. There's more than one account of residents forcing open the topside escape hatch and banging on the shaft walls for help. Some hallways had visible burn marks from attempted arson. Garbage chutes were jammed or broken, scattering litter across the homes, halls, and streets. Electric installations broke or just lost power, and the modern appearance of the apartment building became, for some tenants, nothing but a lie. Barely any better than the sprawling slum neighborhoods that the projects replaced. There were also issues with food supply and social dependency checks. Even when checks for families arrived, they were small and arrived only week to week or less often than that. Many families were single parents and had no breadwinners either. So food was regularly in short supply, and decent grocers were not within reasonable distances. One of the many impacts this environment had was on students' education. We already mentioned habitual truancy, but school surveys also determined that the education district for the projects had lower average English and reading grades than that of the rest of the city. The principle of fair.
And this is all of this that we're watching and we're seeing and he's saying is answering the question of why did they build high-rise public housing projects. This is why. Because they knew it was going to be our people there. They put our people in our version of a ghetto. That's it. What we see is why. It's answering the question of why they built them.
Farron Elementary School told the Chicago Tribune that, quote, the homes aren't oriented towards education, and that during lunch periods in all schools, students were regularly seen wandering the campus without having home or school lunches. The lacking infrastructure was extreme, and although the area had several social facilities nearby, no police or fire department were on that list. Resident Eddie Lehman recalled, quote, growing up, I never saw ambulances. Police would have significantly delayed responses if they showed up at all. And patrols, those weren't common either. By the 1980s, the Taylor Project was a unique breeding ground for juvenile delinquency and gang crime. Tension with the police ran high, and Rose's plan to virtually isolate large neighborhoods of thousands of people with no way.
Now, the violence and all that stuff was handled at one time. But when you hate somebody, one person more than you want to see the community safe, this is the results of that. Back in the late 80s, in the 90s, all the way into the 2000s, NOI was patrolling a lot of the housing projects and was cleaning the housing projects up. But the housing authorities in these cities was like, we're not giving Farrakhan no money. When
thank you, brother. I actually got a brother. Who
do not interrupt me, brother. Don't interrupt me. I'm gonna have to cut you off, brother, if you interrupt me. Don't interrupt me.
I apologize.
Now, the minister had nothing to do with any of these contracts and any of these security firms. These were members, but the minister didn't own none of those security firms and wasn't getting no money from those security firms. And they actually did a fact check to make sure, but they still took the contract from the brother. They hated the minister so much, and they hated the minister more than they wanted to see the community safe. New York, parts of New Jersey, Detroit, Chicago, parts of California, Philly. They hated the minister so much that they took the contract from the brothers when they was doing a good job. I know this for certain because I was one of those brothers in projects, patrolling the projects. They took the contracts from the brothers because they're NOI members. I think if you want to see the community safe, it's that would be prioritized over disliking somebody. You were saying, brother KG?
To progress socially or economically.
Hey, this is a great stream. You're doing great topics. Hey, brother Nasir, I appreciate you. And I don't mean to cut you off on your platform or anything. Much mad love and respect. There's no bullshit. Like, you actually showing this shit. You breaking it down. Me, I try to show support, but like I'm there where the support need to be at. Like I'm where I'm supposed to be at. You feel me?
Indeed, I feel you, brother. I appreciate it.
No bullshit. Like you can't take that. Can't nobody take that from you from the audience and from the universe. No bull. Like I'll be right there. You know what I'm saying? And what I want to do, I really want to do a couple of streams. Like now, people be saying like interviews, real time.
Can you repeat that, brother? I didn't hear you. Can you repeat
You know
that?
how people be saying they want to do like interviews like with people in their streams. Oh, I
Yeah.
just got some hundred subscribers, right? So what I want to do is like a topic. You know, you got the topic, and I joined up with you, and then I need to meet up. But like, nah, I support you. You know, as you know, I'll be there.
Brother, you do the topic, brother. If it's something that I can add to, I'll come through, brother.
Already.
Right.
You ain't got it. You ain't got to say that. I already know that. But, all right. You can play it. Look, but look, and then we can ask questions and stuff because I'm dub streaming. You know what I'm saying? So.
Indeed. Well, I don't want to be long with this. I want to go ahead on and finish this presentation.
Yeah,
I want to finish up. All right, brother.
Led to a more aggravated reaction than he could have ever imagined. Young men and teenagers, rightfully mad with the situation the Chicago government had actively put them in, were a breeding ground for crime and discontent. The consequences weren't just bloody, they were deadly.
What do we think happening today with the influx of all the
migrants,
the migrants in Chicago right now? I mean, it was bad then, but I'm absolutely certain it's worse now.
In an article from August of 1970, the New York Times reported that in the past month, 3 Chicago police officers were killed at nearby projects like the Taylor homes, and 7 had died similarly the previous year. Hence, some feared that the amount of bitter young men could start literal urban warfare against the police and the city officials. Even in one July.
Now, I don't like that wordplay, bitter young men, because first, as Flavor Flav would say, we have a right to be hostile. Our people are being persecuted. And secondly, they're not bitter young men. 9 times out of 10, if cops are being killed at Robert Taylor homes and Cabrini Greens, is they went there looking for that and they got what they found.
Incident when shooters assassinated 2 officers on the 6th floor. When their fellow officers tried to recover them, they had to use M16s to suppress the high-rise gunfire aimed at them. When the attacks weren't lethal, they were still throwing trash, bricks, bottles, and heavy objects within arm's reach. Police weren't the only casualties either. Gangs were fighting, and many got caught in the crossfire. From one block to others, young men, children, adults, and passerbyers were gunned down or attacked with alarming frequency. While this eventually settled down, slowly and with several further incidents, it was clear from the city's perspective that the projects were a failure. This will be hard to believe, but by the 90s, things were even worse. The buildings had decayed significantly, maintenance was high, the crime was still an issue, with at least a third of project boys in rival gangs. Blocks in Robert Taylor had a vacancy rate of 20 to 40%, meaning the projects were at the point of no return. One reporter compared life here to being in a submarine, entirely isolated in the harshest of conditions. After just 30 years, the city government decided the projects had to go.
These buildings are not even that old, as so was the projects that I grew up in. The projects I grew up in was they were built, completed in the late 1950s, but in 2001 they got imploded. So the buildings wasn't even that old, but they imploded them. But you know, and you know what? I'm not mad at that because our people is not supposed to live like that anyway. So I'm not mad that they imploded the projects. That's the end of the project. That's the end of the experiment. I hate my people had to go through it. My family had to go through it. But when they tore those down, look, I'm not mad at it. I mean, I met some beautiful people there, but I'm not mad that they imploded those buildings. I'm not.
Hey, Bro.Nasir, I'm gonna say it correctly. Check this out. The beautiful people you met, just like me and you, and our family and friends, that resonate with what I'm about to say. All that bullshit you went through, that shit, look, a sword or a shield gotta get. Exactly. Go through some shit. that shit refined it. So all those experiences and shit we had. Don't get me wrong. I know shit ain't no. I can't take away from the negative. But one thing I can say, I built myself up off every negative and positive spirit.
Yeah, I mean, you got the negative and the positive, but you know, I hold on to the good memories. But I'm glad that
thank you.
Those buildings are a memory.
Hey, look, check this out.
Residents that couldn't.
I gotta move on, brother.
Those memories, and the block parties and everybody had.
Yeah,
I promise you, this
definitely
shit
the
was
block
probably
party.
the best shit ever. That shit was probably the best shit ever.
Oh yeah, definitely, brother. Block
Hey, look,
parties.
am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're not. No,
And
you're
see,
not.
And I ain't never and now look, my friends are like, nah. My people's like, nah. He's like, I'm on the people, yeah. So my people's like, nah, but we at the block party, yeah. Nah, y'all be having that shit.
Oh yeah, definitely, bro.
Couldn't afford new housing, independently moved to other projects across the city, or left the projects for private dwellings with Section 8 certificates. These documents thankfully guaranteed that 34,000 displaced residents could rent private homes proportionate to 30% of their income. The rest was covered by the Federal Housing and Urbanization Program, Hope 6. Plans were drawn up for the new housing complexes, community centers, and shopping centers to replace the apartment blocks once torn down. Between 1997 to 2005, residents gradually moved out as the new project was put forward. By 2007, the last block was demolished. So where exactly does that leave us? Well, without putting things in absolutes, there's no way of denying that the Robert Taylor homes were a shamefully failed project for the Chicago Housing Authority. Bruce Katz, president of the Washington, D.C. based Brookings Research Institute, said he was happy they were coming down. Quote, "They shouldn't have been built the way they were built. They were a recipe for disaster. No one should have had to grow up in an environment like that. Frankly, I see little room to argue. The projects were poorly designed.
Looks like prison tiers. Look like straight up prison tiers, and got a church, a Ebenezer Baptist church right in the middle of that shit.
Funded and critically mismanaged. They created an environment where simply getting in the elevator was a risk to your safety. It accidentally encouraged drug dealing, juvenile delinquency, and gang rivalry. Activities which perhaps Chicago didn't need any encouragement to lean towards. While the community that lived in the Taylor homes made the best of it collectively, even raising some well-known figures including athletes, comedians, and Mr. T, they were all raised through a system.
Yeah, my man, Corey Holcomb grew up in Robert Taylor homes, and Michael Collier, the comedian. Both of those comedians grew up in Robert Taylor homes.
That should have never existed. The result was a community torn by crime and poverty. The question is whether or not the Robert Taylor homes were designed poorly on purpose, but I'll let you be the judge on that in the comment section. I'd also be curious if any of you watching this have your own stories from the projects. The South Side of Chicago is an interesting, yet at times very dangerous place, with many stories to be discovered.
Now, I'm going to end the stream with this. This were the projects I grew up in the day they imploded them.
You know what? Bro.Nasir, Bro.Nasir is they the cheapest thing all over the world and categorized.
KJ, I appreciate you for coming through, brother, supporting me. I'm gonna end this stream right here. I'm ending it right here. And I want to thank you for joining me, brother. My brother King Genocide. I want to thank my brother, the Smokers Lounge, Chris Cyphers, for coming through, supporting me. My brother Hawkeye, my brother Key Norfolk,
Already.
my brother Big Dog Filio G, my sister Sharon Walker, my sister the True Daughter of Darkness, my brother Marco Power, my brother P Moses. Thanks for coming through. My brother Dre Cobb's Music. Thank you for coming through. I appreciate it.
This was in the building. This was in the building. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for joining me this evening. Who else we got here?
Let's get the shout out, son. I'm gonna do because I got 100 subscribers.
My brother Relentless. Thank you for coming through, brother. Yeah, he was one of the first ones in the building. Relentless and OG was one of the first ones in the building this evening. And as a matter of fact, you was the first one, brother. KG. I thank you again, brother, for coming through. Relentless was first.
Hey, already. Hey, look. Hey, check this out. When somebody doing a positive build, I'm gonna be there. Respect to my big bro, you, Bro.Nasir.
I appreciate you, brother.
My bullshit, like when you be speaking of knowledge, you actually going to some shit. I'm dub streaming, so to get to my crowd and your crowd. Look, our community is a building. We learning this shit together, and I appreciate that shit. I appreciate you allowing me to dub stream your shit to my shit.
No problem, brother. No problem. You know, you're trying to grow your channel, brother. You know, brothers supposed to help brothers, and I don't have no problem with that, brother.
Community building, bro. Like no bullshit. Like look, two or more gathered, that shall be. Let me see what God's saying that.
Indeed.
Hey, look, I'm out.
Salute to you, brother. Thank you for coming through again. Salute.
I appreciate being able to be on your platform and help you. If I help you, nah, no bullshit. I really mean that shit. Like, like that 5-star shit. Like, nah, you can't miss that shit. Hey, yo, get that fucking book, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, get my wife's book called Fire. It's it's at Amazon on paperback or Kindle. We got Fire, the finale coming. She's writing it now. It'll be out before the end of the year. I don't know how she write, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. She's real meticulous on, on what she put out. So I don't know if it's going to be the end of the summer or the end of the year, but Fire, the finale, is coming.
So is the one.
That's my that's Fire 2, the finale.
Okay.
Fire 2,
finale. Make sure you find it. Make sure that shit is what you feel like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, that's the missus. I mean, that's her work. That's her work. That's all her. And she's the executive producer here. As a matter of fact, let me pay some bills while I'm at it. You know what I'm saying?
Get your copy of Fire. It's definitely a must-read. If you enjoy hood books, this one is it. Just like the title of the book, it's officially Fire. Get it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle.
Yeah. Oh, boy, bro. Brother,
The once goal-driven, ambitious Sapphire turns to the street life after the sudden death of her big brother Dre. Dre's best friend Devontae tries to honor his homeboy's last request of looking out for his baby sister. A rebellious Sapphire makes it very difficult for Devontae to carry out his promise.